All right, welcome to the Amylase Enzyme Lab. Okay, so you want to make sure you gather your materials first. You want the Amylase Enzyme Activity Lab Kit. You'll also want your biotech refrigerator bag, which hopefully has been in your refrigerator. You're going to use the two big tubes from this bag today. You want to make sure you put the small tube back in the bag, back in the fridge when you're done. Okay. You'll want a piece of paper, you want your safety glasses, and you want to make sure you have your notebook with the flow chart completed. Okay. So I'm going to grab these two tubes out of the bag, the two big ones. And I'm going to zip this back up, and I'm going to put this small tube back in this bag in the refrigerator for the next lab. All right, so put your safety glasses on. We're going to kind of assemble everything here. All right, so first you have your well plate. If it has packaging on it, I'd take it out of the packaging. You can throw the packaging away, right? And so it's these two pieces, the lid and the base. You will need this for another lab this semester. So when you are done with this today, you want to wash this and dry it and put it back in your kits, okay? Don't throw this out, you'll need it. Okay. All right, and then you have bacterial amylase, 5 milligram per milliliter and 10 milligram per milliliter. This is not bacteria, right? This is amylase extracted from bacteria, so totally safe. And then you have a number of other items. So you have 2% starch, a buffer solution, some toothpicks, a dropper bottle of iodine, a saliva collection tube, and some transfer pipettes. Okay, let's get this all here and we'll get going. All right, so make sure that you have your safety glasses on. You may want a cup to put your tubes in. Or a Tupperware, just to help keep them upright. Great, great, great. Okay, so next you are going to collect your saliva. So this is step 3. You're going to spit in this provided saliva tube. You might want to label it saliva. All right, you got your Sharpie. I'm going to spit into mine off camera because I know that's off-putting to some people, but you want to get a good amount of saliva in here. You want to make sure you haven't eaten or drunk right before doing this, and you want to collect a fair amount of saliva in the bottom of here. All right, it may take a little bit of time, but you're just going to spit into the tube several times. Okay, these are clean tubes. It's okay to touch your mouth to the tube. All right, you want to collect some saliva in the bottom. Okay, think of something delicious. Once you've collected your saliva, you can kind of set that aside for now. Okay. And you're going to go ahead and set up your well plate. Okay. So take the cover off and set it aside. Okay. And then I'm going to have you label, just like you've done for previous labs, label on a piece of white paper behind your well plate what's going to go in each row. Okay, so this is going to be my well 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These wells are going to be empty. Okay. So I'm actually going to shift this over here. So wells 1 and 2 are going to be human salivary amylase. Okay, wells 3 and 4 will be 10 milligram per milliliter. Let's see, get that lined up. Wells 5 and 6 will be 5 milligram per milliliter. And then the last row is going to be buffer only. Buffer is the solution that these enzymes are in, and that's going to be your negative control. Okay, so label your plate. Okay, and again, this last column is going to be empty. You're just doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. The first thing you're going to do, so this is step 14, you're going to add 1 milliliter of your 2% starch solution to each of the 8 wells that you're going to use. So again, leave this last row empty, but each of these, you're going to put 1 milliliter of starch into. You're going to use a transfer pipette, and if you look at these carefully, you'll see right up here by the base of the bulb, there's a marking that says 1 milliliter. So that's how much you want to fill this up to put into each well. Okay. I would give your starch tube a shake before I use it, just in case it's settled. All right. You want to fill it up just to that line so there's no air in the tip and it's just meeting that mark there. That's how much you're going to put in each well. Okay? You're going to do that for all 8, leaving this last column empty. All right, and then you want to rinse this out. So I'd get a cup of water and kind of squirt it a couple of times into the sink. These next steps should be done quickly. So you don't want to take breaks in between these next steps. First, you're going to add the different sources of amylase. So that's your 5 milligram per milliliter bacterial amylase, your 10 milligram per milliliter bacterial amylase, your buffer is the control, and then your saliva. Those are your 4 sources of amylase. The buffer, obviously, not actually having any. Okay, so you're going to use a pipette, and you want to go in this specific order. So using your transfer pipette, you're going to start with the buffer at the bottom. Okay, mix up the buffer a little. This is your buffer tube, right? So this is step 5 to the buffer row. You're going to use a transfer pipette, okay? And you're going to add 1 ml of your buffer solution to each of the 2 wells that you're using in this row. So that's wells 7 and 8, right? Don't do the last one, that one's empty. Okay, you're then going to stir it with a toothpick. Okay. And again, you're measuring with your transfer pipette right to that spot there. Beneath the bulb, make sure there's no air in the tip. Okay. For both of those. Last 2 rows. Okay, this buffer is what everything else is in, so this pipette is not really contaminated because everything else is in this same solution. Okay, toothpick, you're going to stir. Okay, you're going to prop that up in that row. That is now the buffer toothpick. Don't use it to stir anything else. Okay. All right, next up, you're going to do the next row, which is the 5 milligram per milliliter. You can use the same pipette because the buffer is the same solution that's in all of these. You're going to add 1 ml of this to each of your 5 milligram per milliliter wells. Okay. Great. Get a new clean toothpick. Okay, you're going to stir, stir, and set to the side. Okay. That's now your 5 milligram per milliliter toothpick. Okay, now 10 milligram per milliliter. This is just more concentrated version of the last one, so you can use the same pipette here. Okay, you're gonna spit it out, any extra liquid beforehand, and then you're gonna carefully draw up 1 ml for each of these. All right. Clean toothpick and stir. That's your 10 toothpick. All right, now you have to use a new clean transfer pipette now. Your saliva is a different solution. Okay, the saliva is going to be a little bit thicker, so, you know, prepare yourself. Don't be too grossed out. But again, you want to add 1 ml to each of these wells. Try to avoid bubbles as much as possible. Yes, it is much grosser. If you find you run out, you may need to spit a little more into this tube to gather a little more. Gross. All right. So once you've collected more if needed, draw it up into the pipette, 1 ml, spit it into that well. Okay, this goes immediately in the trash, as does your saliva collection vial, okay? These are biohazards to anyone else aside from you, so you wanna put them straight in the trash, wash your hands real quick. Back, quick as can be. All right, last toothpick, stir. It's a little more viscous, you gotta stir a little more. Second well, stir. Okay, great. Now, you're gonna make sure that you have this on its white background, make sure everything's lined up and labeled, and you're gonna add some iodine. 1 drop of this 25% glucose iodine to each well. Okay? You wanna be careful with this. If you get it on your fingers, it will stain a little bit. You definitely need to wash your hands right away. Okay, and make sure your safety glasses are on. Okay, so you're gonna crack it open. You do not have a lot extra of this, so please be careful when you're adding your drops to add just 1 drop to each. Okay, we're gonna start with the last row. So slowly, gently squeeze 1 single drop. Okay, cap this back up. You're gonna take the corresponding toothpick and stir each corresponding well. So this was the buffer toothpick, stir the buffer wells. This is the 5 toothpick, stir the 5 wells. Toothpick, stir the 10 wells, and the saliva toothpick, stir the saliva wells. And again, these wells may require more stirring because your saliva is a little bit more viscous than the bacterial amylase. Just want to go until it's all more or less a uniform color. Okay, and now you're gonna take your first photograph, okay? This is your 0 minutes photograph, okay? And then you're gonna let it sit for 10 minutes, and you're gonna come back and check on it. Once the 10 minutes are up, you wanna go ahead and stir everything once more with the corresponding toothpick. And you're gonna record your results. All right, so find your data table in your notebook. Okay, should look something like this, but with an actual title filled in. Okay, and you're gonna fill in the color score for these different rows, for these different wells, okay? So we're gonna start with the first amylase source we'll start from the bottom, we'll do with the buffer. So you'll fill in to your notebook, the amylase source would be buffer. Just fill that in, okay? The first well of the 2 wells, so we'll call this the first well for this one, okay? You're gonna give it a score from 0, which is a dark purple or black, to a 5, which is a very light or clear amber. I'd say both of these are very dark purple black, so both of these would be a 0. Okay, so I'd go in my notebook, my color score for well 1 and well 2 would both be 0. You will have to do depending on your own results, right? And then thinking about that scale, okay, so basically clear is this one. So the 2 human salivary amylases are basically clear. That would be our 5, right? So you got to kind of think about where the rest of them fall in that scale, okay? All right, so then you want to list out your other sources of amylase, right? So there's the 5 milligram per milliliter bacterial amylase, 10 milligram per milliliter bacterial amylase, and the human salivary amylase, that's your saliva, okay? And you're going to fill in for each of the wells for each of those. So like I'd say my 2 5 milligram per milliliter ones, they're definitely a lot lighter than my buffer only, right? But they're not as light as the other ones. So maybe I'd call these what would I say, a 3 maybe for both of those? And both of mine are the same. Yours may or may not be. The 10 milligram per milliliter is even lighter, so maybe that's a 4 for both of mine. And then these ones are totally clear, so that's a 5. All right, so I filled in my data table here just like that. You're then gonna calculate the averages, so add these up and divide by 2. So my average for buffer was 0. Right? Fill that into your final average, color score average column. Okay, my average for these, all of mine ended up being the same, but basically to find the average, you add the 2 together and divide by 2, right? And that's gonna be your average. Again, your results will likely be different from mine, but this is what you're gonna fill into the online class data table. All right, and then you want to take your final photograph and clean up. So this is your 10-minute photograph. Okay, so take a nice clear picture here with all the colors showing. All right, this is the main thing that you want to keep. So this is going to be returned to Carmont along with your balance and your funnel and safety glasses and stuff at the end of the semester. Okay, so put this back in your original lab kit. Make sure you bring this back to Carmont. Everything else can be cleaned up. These tubes can be thrown away. All of these are done. Any unused transfer pipettes you may want to save, but anything that's been used, I would throw away. Toothpicks all get thrown away. And then this well plate needs to be saved. Do not throw away your well plate. Please wash it thoroughly immediately after doing the lab so nothing gets stuck in here. Okay, I would use some soap and water and then let it dry completely and put it back in your lab kit. Wash your hands and you're done.